Because we've been talking.
Welcome to the Destination Workplace Show, a podcast that inspires CEOs, real estate, workplace, and HR leaders to create meaningful and purposeful employee experiences inside and outside of the office. My name is Nelly Hyatt, and I'm a work futurist. And I'm sitting down with leaders to talk about the future of the workplace, their vision and ambition for the next generation of employees, and how to have an impact.
So Corinne Murray, Director of Workplace Strategy at RXR within our innovation studio, effectively just building out service and workplace products. So I am building out like office as a service type elements, building out space environment and flex products, and then figuring out what's the research and development that fuels that on the back end. So how are we going to be capturing data from anything that we build, and how do we then capture that to say what's working, what's not, what needs to change, and so on. So I love doing the building, but I also need to be kept in check, just like everyone else. And so, I can't just keep building because I think one thing or another works. We need to start following the data in order for this to really be successful, and also to live beyond just me. I'm just one brain.
Exactly. Can you name the few sources of data you're looking at?
In the innovation studio, we've got a team that's building out digital products. So we've got, sensors, we've got badge data, things like, so all the basic stuff, but just creating it in a more congregated setting so we can actually look at all this data together and how it communicates with one another rather than needing to pull from all of these disparate sources. And then also the RXOs, once we get up and running with more of the space-driven products that I've been building, they're going to be my, ears and eyes on the ground and, operating like my little cultural anthropologists. So making sure that whatever quant data that we have is reconciled with the anecdotal, the qualitative, and really just, the in-experience knowledge that we're getting from people.
Talked about that, but like this also innovation you're bringing to the landlord, and landlord have been so quiet this entire time. I'm like, I don't understand why they've been so quiet.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, also just for the podcast, I do want to just say, whatever I say is my opinion, and it is not representative of RXR.
Yeah.
But, this moment is so fundamentally different than how commercial real estate has operated for, the majority of its existence. And I think there's still this balance of, I'm assuming that there is a cluster of thinking around, this is just another downturn, we'll see our way to the other side of it, and it's going to be fine. And then there are other landlords who are, more audacious and willing to, either they have the resources or they have, sort of just the fire in the belly of figuring out, let's just build an insurance policy just in case it's not like every other downturn. Yeah. And that's where you're seeing a lot of landlords get into the community and the engagement and the digital piece, all of which are important, but what has been the slowest to evolve is that space innovation piece of things. And part of that is it's not necessarily their domain expertise. Workplace is a relatively new concept that landlords need to be thinking about. Yeah. And not that many landlords yet, at least, have people like me in there. Yeah. And I think that's a trend that will change very drastically, very quickly. Because workplace is now going to be much more about a supply conversation rather than it being a corporate, an occupier problem. Or it's not to say that the energy is shifting more to us. It's really just that landlords are now sort of waking up to the same awareness that occupiers have had to be wrestling with for, the past 10, 15 years of shared environments and more dense environments, and there are people having access to tools to voice complaints and frustrations and all, and figuring out how to hack the space for themselves. So there's a lot of stuff at play, But yeah, there's just everyone's just sort of waking up right now, and that's both really encouraging to say like, oh, there are going to be people who like are joining the band with me, but also like I'm also the one that's like, come on, we gotta go. Like now's the moment. So it's definitely balancing my own patience with the fact that like this is a very radical thing for landlords to be thinking about, and almost none of the talent that's in a landlord shop, while they might appreciate the importance of workplace, they don't have enough of the knowledge or the years of expertise to really have a point of view.
I think I echo your temper. I'm like, I wish we could just move faster. There's so much resistance. How can we match this resistance both in the landlord-tenant relationship as employers-employee? Should we have a revolt, like all employees who are very afraid to be forced to go back to the office just quit, and all the tenants who don't want to go back to leasing 10-year lease or 20 years just stop paying rent? Is it that kind of revolt that we need to show that we shouldn't resist? I'm exaggerating, but
Of course, but like where I do feel there is the most agency and where that pain, as I'm saying, will be most obvious is through show up rates. Like all the work that I'm doing is intended to make RXR buildings more sticky and places that people want to be, and or not even just want, have a functional reason to be there, and they derive more benefit or more effectiveness by being there. And so that's my task, that's my team's task. But broadly speaking, is changes to the work environment does not necessarily, it doesn't have a direct correlation to the cultural evolution that needs to come with this. And that's the piece that isn't quite getting the attention that I think it needs to. And when I say this, I mean more of like, how are people leaders being trained to support disparate teams? That's always going to be a challenge, and so much of that is personal style. But how do we make that as conducive for a people leader to not necessarily be like a free range leader and just let people go and go crazy and do their own thing, but how do we encourage servant leadership? How do we encourage a coaching dynamic rather than a command and control one? And that's going to be a really, really challenging, behavioral block that we're going to need to work through, I think, across industry, across age, demographic, all of it. That's going to be one of the more challenging things to come in the next decade.
I join you on the fact that I care a lot about our people leaders, because actually touch our environment so much. And it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. If the manager are not better at managing virtual teams, and they need to have under their eye their teams, then we have to implement the model that we had before, where there's one desk per person, there's a manager and all his team. If we in our spaces not give that, we force manager to be better. So who should force the change?
I think, and I speak from years now of doing space transformations, and that sort of being the intended to be the tip of the spear of cultural change. It's a very idealistic and admirable way of thinking. The human mind is much more powerful, and the human mind will say, nah, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to keep doing my thing my way. And then that doesn't just, if you're a leader, that doesn't just affect you. That affects however many people report to you, however many people you are working with cross-functionally. So we're moving in the right direction. I always want us to move faster, but that's just my tendency. But we're going to get there.
I love it. Thank you so much, Corinne. It was my pleasure to have you with me.
Likewise. Thank you so much.